Rob here, and in this video I just want to go through what you can expect from component 1, which is the Media Products, Industries and Audiences exam. This will cover everything that we did in year 1 of your course. This will have, in theory, a 2 hour and 15-minute exam, and it will represent 35% of your qualification. Now, in this exam, we're going to be looking at the media language, representation, media industries, audience, and media context. And there are two sections, Section A and Section B. Section A is about analysing media language and representation, and Section B is about understanding media industries and audiences. So, in Section A, we'll be looking at media language and representation in relation to two of the following media forms. Now, that could be advertising, marketing, music video, or newspapers. There will always be two questions in this section. One question assessing media language in relation to an unseen audiovisual or print resource, and one extended response comparing questions assessing representation in one set product and an audiovisual or print resource in relation to media context. What does this mean? Question 1 will always be a video. Now, the questions in each section add up to 45, and the entire exam adds up to 90. Now, you'll have in Section A one 30-mark question and one 15-mark question. The 15-mark question could come first, it could come second. The 30-mark question could come first, could come second. It could go in either order. Whatever happens, question 1 will always have an unseen audio-visual product. So it'll be some video you've never seen before. Could be an advert, could be a music video, could be, could be anything, right? You will then either be expected to analyse that on its own for 15 marks, or you'll be expected to compare it to a set text that you have done before, and that will be worth 30 marks. Now, just because you're watching a video in the exam doesn't need to say you'll have to compare it to another video. So you could be comparing one video to another video, but you could be comparing a video to a text product. So, for example, you might watch, say, I don't know, could be anything. You could watch an advert and then be expected to compare it to a newspaper cover. You could be watching a music video and have to compare it to a film poster. Kiss the Vampire in that case, not one of the other ones. So you don't know how it's going to work. One question will be 30 marks, the other one, whatever it is, will be 15. So again, in this one, you might just be given one or two print products and expect to analyse those in isolation, comparing them to each other. Or, you could be expected to compare it to something you've done before. It could be any combination. In Section B, these will be what we call stepped questions. So they'll all add up to 45 marks, but there'll be a bunch of them that will all be worth different marks. Some of them will be very short answers that might only be worth 1 or 2 points. Some of them might be worth 8 points, or 10 or 12 or even 15 marks. All I know is that there'll be a question 3 and a question 4. They will have sub-questions and it'll all add up to 45. Either way, one of the questions will be about industries and the other will be about audiences. That could cover advertising. Now that would, in case of advertising and marketing, it would only ever be WaterAid or Tide. It would never be Kiss of the Vampire. That never in Section B, okay? So it could be, could be film posters. In this case, it would be I, Daniel Blake, Black Panther. Or it could be the newspapers, or radio or video games. Radio, which is Late Night Woman's Hour, and video games, which is Assassin's Creed, can only ever be in Section B. You will never get questions about them in section A. So, as we said, written exam, 2 hours 15 minutes, 35% your qualification, 90 marks overall. You will be learning to develop knowledge and understanding of key aspects of the theoretical framework of media language and representations as an essential basis for analysing media products from a variety of forms. In addition, learners will study products from specific media industries and for specified audiences to develop their knowledge and understanding of those areas of the theoretical framework. Learners will also explore how media products relate to their social, cultural, historical, political and economic contexts. In this component, learners will develop their ability to use subject-specific terminology and theories. In other words, there are certain set texts which everybody has to study. There will be some in the exam you've never seen before, and you'll be expected to take the skills you've learned analysing things in class and apply them to stuff you've never seen before. They're not going to show you something that's completely random that you've never seen before. It will be something that is a advert of some kind, or a newspaper, or a music video or something. It's not likely they're going to show you, like, I don't know, something completely out there. Either way, you should be able to take the theories you learned in class and apply them to things that you have seen and things that you haven't seen before. As I've said, in section A, you're just going to assess your ability to analyse media language and representation in two of the media forms studied for this section: advertising and marketing, music video, or newspapers. As I said, one question will assess media language and will require analysis of an unseen audiovisual or print resource from any of the media forms studied in this section. If it's a print one, it'll be question 2. If it's audio video, it'll be question 1, because question 1's always audio visual. The other question will be about representation. So if the audio-visual question is about media language, then the representation one will always be about print, and vice versa. Okay? So one question will require you to compare one set product and one unseen audio-visual print resource. It could be from any of the forms we've studied. It'll be an extended response. That means they're essay questions. As I said, one will be 15 marks, the other will be 30 marks, okay? Comparison set products from the same media form or from different media forms may be required, like I said. Reference to relevant media context will also be required, so you've got to put it in this wider socio-cultural context. Across section A as a whole, there will always be one unseen audiovisual resource, question 1, and one unseen print resource. Let's say question 2, from the looks of it, will always be print. But you could say get a video in question 1 and be expected to compare it to a print product. So let me think. You could, for example, get let's say a horror movie trailer and be expected to compare it to the Kiss of the Vampire poster, for example. You're going to be expected to construct and develop a sustained line of reasoning. It's coherent, it's got to make sense, it's got to be relevant, it's got to be substantiated, that is backed up by evidence, and it's got to be logically structured. So what is the paper going to look like? Well, this will be your front cover. It's got all the instructions on it. You've got to use black or ink. Can't use a gel pen. Not allowed to use correction fluid. You'll be given a booklet. All your answers have to be written in there. This is standard stuff. It does say you are going to be advised to spend approximately 1 hour and 30 minutes in section A, including watching the unseen resources, and approximately 45 minutes in section B. It reminds you to use relevant theories and subject-specific terminology. Right, this is what it could look like. This is the exemplar one. It's the first one they've given us. So as you can see, in this case, the first question is going to be a 30-mark question, and it's going to ask you to compare two videos in this case. One you've never seen before, which is the Save the Children Most Shocking Second a Day campaign, and you can be expected to compare it to the WaterAid Rain for Good, Claudia Sing Sunshine on a Rainy Day video. Okay. Now what will happen is you'll be given a minute to read the paper before the exam starts. You will then be shown this video, the unseen one you've never seen before. You'll be shown it 3 times. Now in the first one, you just watch the advert. You don't make any notes. You just watch it. It will then play again. You watch the advert again. This time you can make notes. You will then get 5 minutes to make notes. Final viewing, you get to watch it again and make some notes. Once that's over, you start the question. Now what I would do is I would take my note paper, divide it up into 4, and in one section I would have cinematography and another section mise-en-scène, another section editing, and another section sound. And I'd probably do something like mise-en-scène and cinematography on the second viewing and editing and sound on the third viewing. Up to you though, your exam paper, do what you like. But that's what I think would be the best way to go about doing it. Obviously within that, of course, you've also got to be considering, well, what other kind of theories are relevant and what are the context and all this kind of stuff, depending what the question is. Okay? The question in this case says, compare how audiences are positioned by the representations. So if this is the representation one, the other one's going to be the media language one. So in this one, you're particularly focusing on how representation is constructed. Now you've got to mention, there'll be something like this with bullet points on it for a 30-mark question. You've got to cover every bullet point. If you miss one of those out, you're losing a third of the marks. So make sure you cover all of them. So in this case, it's asking you to look at how representation is constructed. How they're constructing versions of reality. Well, what does that mean? Okay. Consider the similarities and differences in how audiences are positioned by the representations. So this is telling you you've got to compare and contrast. And then you've got to make judgments and draw conclusions about how far the representations relate in relative media contexts. So, you know, what is the purpose of these adverts? What are they trying to do? How are they doing it? There's a lot to cover for 30 marks. In this one, I'd be looking at least 3 to 4 sides of A4 for that, minimum. This one, about 2 sides of A4, right? This one is based on 2 unseen newspapers you've not seen before. Now in this case, you wouldn't be expected to compare it to the newspapers we have studied in class. What you've got to do instead is take the skills you learned studying the ones of the class and apply them to the ones you've never seen before. So this one, you've got resource A here and resource B here. Well, sorry, resource A, part 2 there, right? And these are both from the day after Trump was elected, I believe. But for the first bunch of students who went through this exam, so was their set text. The students who are currently going through the exams have got a different newspapers to study than the first lot did. Either way, it's relevant to what they studied in class. So it says here, how does media language incorporate viewpoints and ideologies in these front pages from the Sun and the Daily Mail? So what here you'd be talking about is how, you know, both of these newspapers are politically right-wing. How they are, this one in particular is very supportive of Trump. So is the Sun, quite frankly, but they're making fun of it. Now, why? Because then we can bring in things like intertextuality, because who owns the Sun? Well, Rupert Murdoch. What did Rupert Murdoch used to own when this newspaper was released? Fox. What did Fox own? The Simpsons. Intersexuality going on there, right? So you'd be having to talk about how both of these newspapers, in some way or another, promote right-wing, pro-Trump ideologies. Now, section B, as you can see, is 2 questions, each of which subdivided into what we call stepped questions. Some of them are really easy, simple, 1 or 2 line answers, like what is a media conglomerate for 1 mark. To explain the definition of media conglomerate and give an example. Briefly explain what is meant by distribution. Well, it's not very specific. It could be distribution of anything. You could use distribution of film, distribution of newspapers, distribution of radio, it doesn't matter. How have recent technological changes had an impact on the production and distribution of newspapers? 10-mark question. I'm going to be looking for at least a side of A4 for a 10-mark question. 12 marks, I'll be looking somewhere to side and a half. Maybe, yeah. So, in this case, this is more like a mini essay, right? So, just like any other essay, you'd start off by explaining what production and distribution are, tell us what newspapers you're going to look at as examples, and then explain how technological changes have affected that. You're going to bring in convergence on this, a little bit of theory, see someone like Gulch and Clay Shirky. So you'd be talking about how technological changes, everyone gets the newspapers off the internet now, don't they? Or people aren't getting the news at all off the newspapers. They're going to, things like Facebook and Twitter and 4chan and whatever to get their news instead, right? So fewer and fewer people are buying newspapers. So these are fairly simple little questions, but this has got to be done like an essay. Answer the question, evidence, conclusion. Same with this one. Explain how, it says here in question 3C, you'll be rewarded for drawing together knowledge and understanding from across the full course of study, including different areas of theoretical frameworks and media contexts. Explain how ownership shapes media products. Refer to the Daily Mirror to support your point. So, obviously, you're going to be explaining here about conglomerates, cross-media conglomerates. You're going to be talking about what who the owners are, what their political messages are, how those things have changed over the time, what ideologies are they promoting, how are they just making a shift from a print product to a cross-platform brand, etc. Slightly shorter question, but still, best part of the side long. Explain how national global audiences can be reached through different media technologies and platforms. Not dissimilar to that one, to be perfectly honest, or that one, come to that. Again, we're looking at the fact that Late Night Woman's Hour is not just a radio show you listen to on the radio. You've got the BBC Sounds app. You've got podcasting sites like iTunes, for example, where you can go and listen to Late Night Woman's Hour. You can be time shifting it, so you're not actually having to listen to it whilst it's broadcast. So we've got simulcast and catch-up. So most people listening to Late Night Woman's Hour are probably going to be doing through catch-up. Probably in bed whilst listening on the headphones. Or you could be listening to it in the car. You could be listening to it live. You could be listening the day after. Whatever. So we're looking at how technology has changed radio and how it can be, international if you wanted to. Pirated if you wanted to. And again, how do media organisations meet the needs of specialist audiences? Well, this you're going to need to know who Late Night Woman's Hour's audience is and what makes them different. What makes them a specialised audience? And, what is a specialised audience? What's the opposite of a specialised audience? Again, it's a longer one, so you're going to have more, you're going to have to explain what Late Night Woman's Hour is, how it targets specialist audience, what their audience is, what makes that audience specialised. And here I'd be expecting as well a little bit of textual analysis. So explaining what kind of things are in these texts that relate to the question. So, just to recap on this, certain topics will only ever be in certain sections. So, advertising and marketing, that's Claudius Sings Sunshine on a Rainy Day for Water Aid. It's Kiss the Vampire, and it's Tide's Got What Women Want. All of them could appear in Section A, where you'd be expected to talk about media language, or representation, or media contexts. But Kiss of the Vampire will never be in Section B. Only, potentially, Water Aid and Tide. where you'd be expected to talk about who their audience is and how that relates to context. Film cross-media study, including film marketing. This is I, Daniel Blake of Black Panther. Only ever be in section B and will only ever be about media industries and media contexts. Music video. Riptide by Vance Joy, Dream by Dizzy Rascal. Only ever in section A. Media language, representations, media contexts. Newspapers could go in either section and could be about any topic. In theory, it could be in both sections. Look, it wasn't that example I just showed you. Radio, Late Night Woman's Hour, will only ever be in section B. You'll never be expected to textually analyse an audio text. Alright? Except to discuss how its content relates to industry and audience and context. Okay? So, only ever in section B. Same with video games, which is the Assassin's Creed franchise. You're not going to be expected to have to textually analyse video game sequences. So, or marketing for it or anything like that. It's only ever going to be on industry, audiences and media context. Right, so that's just a little rundown of what's in component A. Any questions? You know where I am. Component 1, I should say. And we'll see you in the next one.